Well, hello and welcome everyone to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A. I'm Dave McCormick from Alpha Software. I'm pleased to present today Dion McCormick, who will be going over the features of Alpha Anywhere version 4.3.2. So this might be a little bit of a shorter session today. Dion is working on doing some training up a group of folks out in California. But we will have perhaps a couple other things to show you at the end of Dion's presentation. But like I said, it might be a little bit shorter this session. Anyway, go ahead though, if you do have any questions, go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar interface. Also this, like our other sessions, will be recorded, and you can find the recordings at videos.alphasoftware.com. So let's begin. Let me just unmute you here. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, welcome. Thank you everybody for joining us. This is Dion McCormick coming you from live in California. This is my view right now, everybody. It's a little, kind of there.
Is that really your view, or did you just...
Yeah, that's a live shot from right out. There's the boat's moving right there. Here, let me zoom in on the boat. See, there's the boat. Let's zoom in there. I wish. No, I'm a little bit farther inland, which is, it's still wonderful. It's cold out here. That's crazy there, but really enjoy it. I actually lived in California for a long time, so it's kind of like coming back to hometown and have family out here. But it's great. But we're doing a wonderful training for a whole group of individuals, about 15 people, and they're ramping up on the tool, and it's going really well, and we're having a lot of fun, and it's a good time. And there are worse places to have to go train people. I will just throw that out right now from that standpoint. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is Dion McCormick. Again, as Dave mentioned, we really appreciate you joining us. We have a little shorter session just because I got to jump back in there. But in the meantime, please use your GoToWebinar control panel to put questions in there. And when you put those questions in there, we'll be reading through them. If we can't get them today, we can obviously schedule them up for the next session or try and reach out to you and get the information you need. That's what this is all about, is helping you do the best job possible with Alpha software, and that's what we're dedicated about and what we do. And as Dave mentioned today, I'm going to be talking about the latest release. Alpha, actually very interesting, over the last year has really kind of gone to shorter release cycles. Therefore, we have more official releases. We always have our pre-releases that are available, which we highly recommend you check out, but also highly recommend you do not use for production environments because they are pre-releases. But we're going to smaller, shorter releases that allow us to get to more stable points quicker and allow you to take advantage of a lot of the fixes without having to wait a longer period of time. We're very excited about that. So today we are going to be talking about the 4.3.2 release. And this is a brand release that came out last week. And it's a smaller point release, has just some very focused items, but it's all about enhancing Alpha on a continual basis so that we can continually create very stable, great software you develop off, but also get you all the new and latest features in your hands so you can deploy them. So this will be a quick overview of the new capabilities here. Now, the version 4.3.2 release focused on 3 areas. One is speed, i.e. how fast do things run in the web browser and on your mobile device. 2 is data integration. Wow, that's bad, Dion there. There we go. Let's do this. Real-time data integration. So bear with me there. And last are some nice little UX improvements that have been added that you'll be able to add and use from yours. So let's walk through these and kind of explain. First is we now have what's called component pre-rendering. And this is been an often requested item. Is the idea behind it is that Alpha is an interpreted system, meaning when you call the server and you request like a grid or a UX component, the server will on the fly generate that component and then deliver it to you through the web browser. And that works well. It's snappy, all get out. But Alpha has added the ability to tell the component, and you'll see this when you start using it, it'll actually ask you if you want to turn on this feature. You now can turn on what's called pre-rendering. And what will happen there is when you save a component in Alpha, at that point in time, it's going to pre-render the HTML, CSS, JavaScript into a format so that when it's published to the server, it operates at a much higher speed, i.e. it loads it up. Basically what it will do is it will take load off the server because the server now, instead of having to render that component, then deliver it to the mobile device or deliver it to the web browser, all it needs to do now is do the delivery part. So it literally grabs it off the disk, throws it to the person or out of memory, throws it down the line to the person, and they're good to go. So what you will find is that your UX components, especially your much more complex, higher control count components, will now be delivered and come up much faster. You're going to have a much snappier interface, much more, your users are going to love it because things are just going to happen a lot faster. They're going to have a very nice experience. They're going to see things load. It's going to operate very quickly. And again, the idea behind this is when you save the component in the development environment, it pre-renders the CSS, HTML, everything else that makes up that component. And then what it does is then when it goes to the server, it's pre-rendered, ready to go, and it gets served there. So check that out. Again, the way you will see that is when you start saving components. Actually, let me go ahead and show you that real quick. I'll go into my development environment real quick and go here and go in there. Let me just open up here. In the properties area of your component, and for people who are newer, this is the Alpha Anywhere development environment. I'm actually inside of a UX component right now. And I'll go down here to the optimizations area here, and you'll notice pre-render component at design time is enabled. I can also tell it when to re-render it. At this time, it's every time the component is saved, but I can also set up a prompt, so it can prompt me to do that if I would like to do that. By the way, when you start creating components now, it's going to ask you, do you want to pre-render this? So you don't have to worry about searching out this property and setting it. The system's going to make it easy for you to do that from that standpoint there. And we click Save, and now when you save it, it's going to pre-render the component. Notice it's giving us a little message. So now it's pre-rendered. So if I go Publish, and I publish up to my server, that it will publish that pre-rendered component there, and therefore it's going to run much faster that's on the server. So that's the first cool new improvement in 4.3.2. But we also have some really cool data integration capabilities that have been added. Excuse me. First is support for something called YAML, Y-A-M-L. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, before this release I didn't know what YAML is. But we'll talk about that in a few moments. Also, for data integration, we have added some new SQLite actions. Alpha has had the ability to dynamically, on the fly, create a SQLite database if you're using PhoneGap and download that to the local mobile device. And we have a number of different customers that are using this capability because it allows you to grab a huge amount of data and bring it down to the local device and be able to access that data. So for instance, if you want to have a full product catalog or a very large set of data, you can do that there. So let's talk about YAML first. Well, what is YAML? And I'll go ahead and go in here, and I'll type in YAML here, and let me go to an example of that, so bear with me. Oh, do I have the speed up on here? I might have to go to the other one there. I actually have to go here. Oh, back to that nice view. Just to everybody, you should just show that through the whole thing and probably more. So this is what YAML looks like, and actually YAML is an offshoot of JSON. The idea behind this is that for data interchange between different systems, we've moved away from like XML, which was one of the original kind of where components there. We now have the ability to use JSON as that interchange, but YAML is actually an even simpler format to be able to exchange data between systems. So we've enabled the ability for you to create, manipulate, and use YAML within Alpha. So you can see this is an example of a YAML structure for an invoice. So you can see it's very simple, very human readable. Part of the problem with XML and earlier ILK was that they're very complex, meaning that you had a whole bunch of tags and all this other stuff and so therefore it wasn't very human readable. JSON went a long way towards making things much more readable. But even then you have the structure, you have the curly brackets and other pieces there. YAML is a very simple markup that basically shows, for instance, we have the invoice, is the invoice numbers here. So you have the data element, the colon, and the actual data value here. And you can use nested. So for instance, bill to, think of that as an object that has these sublevels which have these pieces here. So you can do some research. All you have to do is type YAML into your web browser, and it'll show you here. This is often used for like configuration files. When you don't have a lot of super complex data, you can create a YAML file literally by typing it into a text browser, and then we can grab that data. So for instance, let's say you wanted to store some configuration data into a database column, and you want to be able to read that out, turn it into a pointer variable, and use it in your system. Well, using this format makes life really simple. So that's called YAML, and we have a whole set of new capabilities to support that. And you may find for little small things, JSON's still our primary go-to, but you could use YAML for small like configuration files or small things because it's so easy. You just put in the name and the little colon and the value, and we'll be able to read it out of that text and turn it into something that's very usable within the system here. Now, as we mentioned also, go back here, we've also added some new SQLite actions. And SQLite, we had some basic actions where you could tell the server to just create and download a SQLite database. We also had the ability to say, download an existing SQL database, and then we had some actions to be able to query that database once it's down. And just to be clear, you need to be using the PhoneGap integration when you're doing SQLite actions because the SQLite engine is built into PhoneGap. So really powerful, really neat, and once you start using it, you'll really enjoy it there. But what we did is we found out that it was very sort of rough, meaning at a high, there wasn't very granular. It's sort of like if I had to update data in my local database for SQLite, I had to pull down a whole new database. And therefore, you know, if it's a very large amount of data, it may take a little while for that data to come down from the server to the local. Now, once that data is local, it is super fast and super speedy, but we did have problems with, you know, just it took a long time to do data sets. So actually what the development team has done is allow you to import specific tables to create and download specific information into tables. You can delete locally and you can get fields. So we've added some other sort of enhanced functionality that allows you to do incremental updates and modifications to your SQLite database when it's on your local machine. And the benefit of that is super high performance, meaning that if I have a database with like 100 meg of data and all I want to do is update one table which maybe has maybe a megadata or something like that, I now don't have to download that whole table or that whole database. I can just tell the system, hey, do me a favor, just give me that one table, and then it will bring it down and update my local SQLite database, which is really nice because now it allows you to be more flexible, create higher performance interfaces, and we'll continue to see enhancements in this area because more and more people are using and downloading lots and lots of data. We want to make it easy when you're doing alpha to be able to use that data through SQLite from that standpoint there. So from a data integration, we have support for YAML. YAML is a new way to, you know, sort of like JSON XML to represent data. It's a very simplistic version, or simple, which makes it easy to use and understand. And feel free to experiment and play with that. And then obviously, we also now have the new SQLite actions. Now, UX improvements. As we continue to enhance your ability to create world-class user interface, we want to continue to make your life easier. So you're going to see a number of different things that are coming out and will continue to come out. First is we now support something called Cordova Open. And this is a PhoneGap capability. So again, if you want to use this, you'll need PhoneGap. Basically what Cordova Open allows you to do is to open native file formats on the mobile device. Excel, Word, PDFs, things like that. And this is very powerful for field applications because what you can do is, using our built-in synchronization technology, we can download, along with data from the database, supplemental information such as manuals, maps, other kind of content to the mobile device. So a good example of this is we have a very large enterprise in the Middle East that does telecom servicing. And actually, if you were on our previous, you saw some of what they're doing there. And part of what they do is out in the field, they have mobile devices. And when a person in the field gets a work order, along with that comes documentation, like a PDF of the manual for the device they're supposed to be working on, or maybe a PDF map of the server room they're supposed to go to. And now with Cordova Open, you can actually open all that within the app. So if they can show a list of the supplemental data, tap on it, and right within the app you'll be able to see that content, and therefore they don't have to go outside of the app to be able to see that native content. And again, that's a PhoneGap specific, and it's called Cordova Open. Check that out, and really nice, especially for people who are not only just syncing database information, but providing more rich, secondary documentation such as PDF, Word docs, etc. The next one, which is really nice, is called the step indicator control, and this is a UX control. So let me go ahead and go in to the alpha environment. Actually, you know what? I want to show you this here. Alpha pre-release for the release notes. Oh, I don't want the pre-release. I want alpha release notes, and I'll put this in here. All this, the detailed. Is that pre-release? I want the release notes. Sorry. There we go. Route release, and we're in our new location. We're on Amazon, and let me go ahead and put into the chat window. I'm putting this link here. Oh, I can't do that. So Dave, I'm going to put that in there, and you can go ahead and forward there. But again, all the details about this are at this web address, the release notes, and you can see all that. And by the way, when you're in the alpha, you can go to help and check for new version if you want to download it and update your local system. Remember, if you do download it and update your local system, if you're publishing to servers, you want to be able to update those servers so you're on the same version. That's one of the cardinal rules, is that if you update, you really should update your development machine and absolutely not your server, because some of the new capabilities require the server and the development machine. But you can go to check new version. You can also click here, view release notes, and that'll bring up the release notes. And here's all the data about the changes, the 4.3.2 changes. And so I'm going to go down a little bit here. I'm going to find the step indicator. Okay, so this is a visual indicator. So often when you're building your applications, you want to provide them kind of wizard interface to make it easy for them to understand where they're at in the process. This is very powerful. If you ever see like checkout processes or any kind of registration processes, usually they're segmented. They're not all on one page, but they're segmented across multiple pages in your app. And so we now have what's called the step indicator control you can add to it. It's under the more step indicator area, and it allows you to create these very nice kind of, where am I at my process? And what you can do is, all you have to do is, as you move through the process, you just do a set value of this object, and it will update the visual steps. So you can say on step 1, you only show one tone. Then when you go to the next page or the next panel, you step there. And this is all customizable through CSS and everything else, so you can make it look really sharp and very unique to your application there. But this is nice. This has been asked a lot because people put together wizard interfaces. You could even think of it if you're doing it on a mobile app and you have a form view and you're walking through that form view to collect data, you can actually be showing them how far along they are in terms of collecting data on that form view. So that's called the step indicator control. Again, you'll find that under more and step indicator. And in fact, I do have most, so let me go to my controls right here, go down to the bottom here, click more, and we have the step indicator right there, and add that and you can play with it. And it's a real fun control, very easy. And as you can see, we continue to add more and more of these really nice controls, so you don't have to spend your time developing them. You can just use our capabilities that go from there. So that's called the step indicator. We also now support Gantt Chart support through Google Charts. By the way, if you haven't played with this, this is very, very fun. In your development system, and again, for people who are new, I'm in my development system and I'm at the Web Projects Control Panel. You can click the New button here, Web Component, UX, and we have a real fun one here called Client-Side Charting for Google Charts. And that has pre-made basically how you can use Google Charts to then display charts on your UX form. And it's really easy. Once you kind of review the code, you'll be able to start adding Google Charts, which are very nice looking, very good there. But Google recently introduced, and let me go ahead and go here, Google Charts Gantt. they recently released to the Google Charts library, and it's still new, but the ability to do Gantt charts. And for people who are in the building industry or any kind of project management, and this is still loading, there we go. You're familiar with Gantt charts, but you can now create these nice little Gantt charts. And Alpha has provided or enabled support for this already in our tool. So you can actually load up and create Gantt charts. Now, one thing that's very important to understand is that Gantt charts is in beta and it's brand new, so play with it. The other thing that's really cool about it, and they'll be changing this a lot. You can see it's very simplistic now. Very soon they're going to be able to add, and they'll become very complex Gantt charts. But one thing that's really cool about these Gantt charts is they're actually rendered in SVG, which is very cool. I mean, this is kind of the pattern. Alpha has already adopted SVG for our icons and other pieces like that. But you're going to see more and more because SVG just looks fantastic. It also has nice responsiveness. You'll notice that in this Gantt chart, I can go over it here. Again, fairly limited. If you've seen some of the Gantt charts out there, there's companies like DHTMLX and Fusion Charts that have pretty sophisticated Gantt charts. They're a little bit more mature, but I anticipate Google will be adding features to this very quickly to improve it. But it looks real sharp. And again, this is all rendered with SVG. And that's also a key thing, is that it will not work with older versions of Internet Explorer. So it's just something to know because they don't support SVG, just the modern browsers do. But easy to play with, easy to do. Alpha now provides support for that, and it looks really cool. Last item is JavaScript show and hide list columns. When you are building your list controls, we had a lot of requests to be able to, on the fly, show and hide columns, more like you could do with a grid control. So for instance, if you had 4 columns and you said, oh, in this situation, I only want, like the user may want to select which columns are shown on a list control to match their requirements. We now have some JavaScript commands that allow you to, on the fly, show and hide those list columns. So therefore the user can control it, or you can kind of manage it for them from that standpoint there. So for the 4.3 release, we had 3 major areas. First is speed with the component pre-rendering. So now we have that so that things are going to move faster. For data integration, you can now use YAML, and we have support for that for very simple kind of data integration, and you'll see more and more people supporting YAML as it goes along. Then we also have our new SQLite Actions, which allow you to have more fine granular control over your SQLite databases. We also have a number of UX improvements. Cordova Open, which allows you to open native stuff inside of a PhoneGap app within your particular app. The step indicator, which is a neat little control for wizard type interfaces, or even statuses. Like for instance, I have a project I'm working on right now where it's a ticket system, and the ticket goes through steps. Like it starts at pending, and then it gets resolved and then approved and that. So you can actually use the step indicator control not only as a wizard interface, but also to give a visual indicator to the person of where the thing is in its life cycle, because you tend to deal with life cycles a lot in these kind of apps. So a lot of fun. I'm going to be playing with that for my app to show that. We now can support Gantt charts through Google Chart. They're very pretty. They're very early, but very nice for putting together kind of showing data over time. And then our JavaScript show and hide. And so what you're going to find out is that on releases, this didn't have a massive amount of pieces, but a lot of bug fixes are in 4.3.2, a lot of little tweaks and enhancements that I haven't covered here just to improve it. And you'll see as Alpha continues, we're going to have more smaller point releases, which will get these features into a stable production-worthy out faster. And along with that, very important, is introduce more new features quicker and get all the bug fixes that we come across and get them fixed into the app sooner, so that you don't have to wait longer to go between different servers. And again, if you install it, make sure if you install on your development machine and you're going to actually use it, you have to make sure your application server is also up to the same version, because if you use a new feature on there and you're using an old server, you might run into gotchas. And I've personally experienced that a long time ago, and therefore I have the discipline of whenever I have to update my development system for real, then I update my server. Obviously, you can download it and kind of operate it secondly just to experiment with stuff if you so choose from there. So that is the Alpha 4.3.2 release. Dave, got a little bit of time for questions about that or anything, so I'll hand it back to you.
Sure, I do have a few questions that I know you need to go, and then after that,
I've got about 5 minutes, so we're good.
Fantastic. So we'll start pre-rendering. So this is a great question: is when would you not use pre-rendering? Doesn't it seem like something? Yeah.
Very good point. If you're doing dynamic style and also some dynamic security show hide stuff, pre-rendering isn't recommended. If I go back in here and I go into my web component and I go to my properties here, and we'll scroll on down to the optimizations. If you do not want to be able to change the style at runtime, there's some certain things that can be handled, and it really is how dynamic is your form, because pre-rendering makes certain assumptions in terms of what the user will see. So if you have, and I think the key area is that if you have security where things are being shown and hide, I think there may be a conflict there, but it tells you a little bit more about it. If you go into properties pre-rendering, this will explain a little bit what happened. But notice it says not all components, however, can be pre-rendered. For example, components that use security to show and hide certain controls will not work at pre-rendering, because that needs to have a, when it's served up from the server, it needs to look at the security at that point in time of who's logged in and then do the rendering at that point. So if it's got like security show hide, then yeah, you're limited in terms of what pre-rendering. And it's smart enough if you start enabling to know that. So, but for most of your other forms, UXs, you should have no trouble using pre-rendering.
That's great. We do have a show hide question, actually. Someone would like to see if you could show an example of a JavaScript show hide of a column.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new component here, and I'm going to create a UX component right here. Okay. And I'm going to create a blank. I'm not going to use anyone. I'm just going to create a blank here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a text box, and I'll just call it text 1 and text 2. I'll actually create 2 of them here. So I've got 2 text boxes there. And I'm going to add a button in here. So I'm going to put a button below there. I'm going to go hide. Okay. So I've got a button here, and what I want to do is when I click on it, I want to show and hide text box number 2. So I'm going to actually take text box number 2, and I'm going to put a container around it. And what a container is, for people who haven't used it, is a invisible property. So I'm going to make sure it's in there. So it's invisible, meaning that it's really a div on HTML, but it surrounds text 2. And the cool thing is I can now apply things to that, which will take care of. So if I had a set of controls, I could put them in here. And so I could, for instance, on the container, I could put right here a show hide expression looking at other things, and it would just automatically work right there. So let's show how that would work. I can say this is show hide, and so I'm going to put an expression on the container on text number 2, and I'm going to say if text 1 is equal to hello, our show, then what I want to do is show this here. So if this has a certain value, I want to show it there. So we'll go ahead and do a working preview. And you'll notice there's no 2 here, so I can click there and go show and check it out. Notice what happened here. The moment I typed in show, it automatically showed this. Now, you notice that it's staying showed, so I could add a subsequent one that said hide it if it's empty there. Now, that's just, this container then is using my show hide expression to look at another value. But I can also do it programmatically. So on my hide button right here, I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to add a new action, and I'm going to check out, I'm going to type the word container. And you'll notice I have an item here that says show toggle display of a container or div with animation. And again, what I did is I took that, so I'm going to use this one here. I'm going to toggle the visibility. I'm going to select the container, and the container is going to be container number 1. That's what I put in there, and so click OK. So now I've added a little piece of action JavaScript. So now when I click on this hide button, watch what happened. It disappeared. Actually, let's do this. Let me put a there so it looks a little nicer here. So I had two ways. One is I just set the container to watch something else. The other is I have this button when I run that action JavaScript, I click hide. Notice that it disappeared, but it's a toggle. So now I can click there and it showed back up because there's an invisible container around here, and when I click there it's basically telling it. And notice something cool too is that I can apply animation to make it look kind of very cool, and on a mobile platform it's really nice because it uses hardware acceleration there. And so the way I did that was either on the container I used the show hide expression referencing another field. For the button I added the action JavaScript toggle display of a container, and then I picked the container I wanted, and notice I have a whole bunch of other controls here to say, okay, how do I want to do it, how fast do I want to do it, etc. So I can control it. And there. And by the way, if you want to view the JavaScript, this is the JavaScript it generated, so you could literally copy this out and use it elsewhere. So I always like to show that when you use action JavaScript, what we're doing in the background is just taking a nice panel and turning it into JavaScript, and you can always grab this and copy it and use it elsewhere, and it will work just as fine. So that's how you show and hide items on the user interface. You'll notice it's all client-side, so therefore it's instantaneous whether it's on the web browser or running on a mobile device.
Excellent. Hey, thank you very much, Dion.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm going to go back.
It sounds tough being out there in California, so, you know, we all feel bad.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Someone's got to do it. So I'm going to go back to my meeting room, and it's a little sandy, but that's okay there. But thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate you joining us this week. I hope you found a little more information. Dave will talk about this. Will be posted to our videos very shortly, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. And get those questions in. I apologize if I couldn't answer them today, but I'm going to circle back with Dave later today, and we'll make sure we get those answered for you. And you guys have a fabulous day.
Thanks, Dion. So
Thank
coming
you.
up next, I'm actually going to put on Sarah Mitchell, who's our documentation person, who's going to give a short announcement about her webinar, which she's going to be doing next week on HTTP publishing. So let me go ahead and see if you're there. Hello, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Do you want me to go ahead and make you the presenter? Why not?
Okay.
You are now. Share your screen if you want.
So, can you see my screen?
I can.
All right. So next week, I am going to talk about publishing your applications to the Alpha Anywhere server, specifically the standalone server, and the deployment methods we have. And one special deployment method we have is this HTTP publishing, and it's really slick. It's a way to publish without having all these third-party applications. So we'll cover that, how to set it up, and how to publish.
So for those of you, is anyone here today in the webinar, just let me know in the comment section, tried to publish your application using FTP and found it to be clunky or difficult to set up? If the answer is yes, just go ahead and let me know here. Oh, okay. That does seem a few people have, yeah. So the HTTP method, which I was very excited to hear about, actually uses what, the Alpha Anywhere server, is that right, to handle the publishing? It actually publishes by HTTP as it sounds. So that's cool. And you will show us exactly how to do it next week?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you, Sarah. Oh, my goodness. I've never seen so many yeses to a question on a webinar before. Yeah, you know, there's something about that is such a, you know, you get your application built, you've got a server that's set up, and it's just so frustrating it doesn't work. This HTTP publishing is going to be like aspirin. It's going to solve your publishing headaches. So stay tuned for that next Wednesday. And coming up next, we have Chris Martin, who's going to talk a little bit about JSFiddle. And in the meantime, you could go ahead and keep asking questions, especially about release 4.3.2. If we don't have the answers today, we will get them to you. If not, then, and actually we may have the answers today as well because we have Sarah here on the line, our documentation person, who's actually moved the documentation from the release notes into the documentation section. She can point you in the right direction, so feel free to keep asking questions. With that said, let me just jump over to Chris. And I'm going to take you off mute. Hello, Chris, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you right now. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter. So, Chris, what are you going to talk about today?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about a thing called JSFiddle. And
Okay.
let me actually first select the screen I want to show here, and this is the one I want to see. Right here, let me know when you can see my screen.
Okay, I'm looking at an Alpha Anywhere screen with a UX component.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great.
All right, so I'm going to show this little application first. Anyways, I was doing what part of mentoring is clients sometimes have questions on how to use certain components, and I actually had not worked with the Viewbox component yet, but another one of the alpha developers created a Viewbox from that he wanted to modify. So let me just show you the working preview of this application using a Viewbox. So we have a text box when this opens up, and when I click on it, I get this keyboard that pops up.
Cool.
So I can say 25, click OK, and puts 25 in the text box, click on it again. I can clear it, change its value. So anyways.
So I can imagine this being very useful on a mobile device where you want to have a nice big screen, big buttons, and no extra characters if you're just entering a number.
So this was my first time experience working with a Viewbox. So he wanted, this is actually modified now from what it was before. They were, the buttons weren't big enough, some of the text was being hidden, so it's like, well, how do I modify this thing? So I went and took a look at, whoops, I don't want to click that one, I want design. I looked at the numeric keypad that they had created from this. So this is a separate UX control here called numeric keypad. And in it, there's a view box, and there's a number entry where that value is actually being displayed. And then here's the view box control here sitting in a container. Okay. So I'm going to double click on the view box, and that will bring up and show me what the, so here are the some button click events that are on there because there's some buttons. So there's an OK button, and I'm going to explain the view box in a lot more detail in another session. But to get to what my problem was here is that I didn't know how to modify it. I knew how to modify the CSS, but it was very difficult to do it in here because although there is a when you go to the home, it shows that you can turn on preview, but that I don't believe that is working at this time. I'm assuming it's going to work at some point. We'll have that working. So I needed a way to view this. So I use a tool called JSFiddle. So I have my HTML here. And then here I have my CSS, but I needed a way to view this so I can modify this without running the application over and over. And this was a big application to run it over and over again. So I've used this tool before, so I figured I would give it a shot in JSFiddle. And I'm going to bring that up here. So here is that control here running in JSFiddle. So I took my HTML that was in that one tab, and I pasted it here. You have another tab here where you can put your CSS. And then down here you can put JavaScript if you want to actually run some JavaScript against it also. And there's a run button over here so you can run and see how this is going to look. So running it right now, as you can see, this is basically the way it looks there. I'm going to say I wanted a bigger border on it, so I'm going to put I put a 5 in there, and I want to see how that looks. Well, I would have to run the application over and over again to see that, but right here, all I have to do is hit run again, and I can see, boom.
Oh, cool.
So this is awesome. So I can really do my styling really quick and fix what the problem was without having to spend so much time going back and forth. And this is handy to use in another area. He had changed his styling. The person that was working on this project changed the styling of the iOS component, and they somehow changed the default style for one of the for a text box used as a combo box. Setting, so you can change a text box so it can be a combo box instead, which is a drop-down box. And I couldn't see where the value was being set, so I was able to find that component using Google Chrome. And this is another thing that we can do another topic on, using Google Chrome to troubleshoot your HTML see where things are being pulled from and how it's actually being created by Alpha software, because Alpha software is taking those controls and basically converting them over to HTML to display in a web page. And you can see exactly how the controls are built using Chrome and clicking on an object and basically seeing exactly in the code where that is. So I was able to take that code, paste it over here, then I was able to go take their modified CSS file. They took the iOS CS file that comes with Alpha, and they modified it. So I was able to see in here in the HTML what class that they were using. Come over to here and change it to the value of the font size, because it actually didn't have a font value in there for the size. It was using a default, and it was small compared to the way that he handled the rest of the page. So we needed to change that. So I was able to use this tool. It's called JSFiddle. It's pretty awesome. It's JSFiddle.net. If you want to paste that in there, HTTPS actually, JSFiddle.net. Actually, I can paste. It's pretty simple to find to get that.
JSFiddle.net. Yeah.
And that's what I use. But to come back here and show again. So here's.
So you make all of your tweaks in JSFiddle, and then oh, very cool.
And then I pasted it right back in here. So I made my tweaks there, pasted it back into here, and everything was good to go.
Now
so,
it looks like, and I'm just getting this from Sarah, who's texting me, but it looks like you can actually save your JSFiddle and then send a URL to someone and say, hey, this is the JSFiddle I'm working on. Do you want to make it to it?
Yeah, you probably can do that there. Yeah, you can save save the information out. Yeah, so you can actually also save this so that you have it up here next time you come up. So it's actually a pretty handy site for people like me that I'm not great at doing designing and making things look good. So it's really helpful to have this tool here and be able to see things happen on the fly without spending a lot of time in the development running it to see it.
And it looks like it also allows you, although you didn't need to, use JavaScript. It's what the plugin looks like. Which is probably what the point of JSFiddle is, to fiddle around with JavaScript. I imagine this is a whole naming convention.
But it also gives you the ability to edit your CSS, and this is probably one of the more difficult. A lot of people, unless you're a web developer, don't have a lot of experience.
Right, you don't remember what everything is called and what, and whether or not you should be adjusting the margin rather than the padding or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And basically what was happening, these buttons, when I changed the size of these buttons, then of course this button right here wasn't lining up correctly. So when I changed the size of these, there was another button that had to be sized to get it looking just right. And that could have been several minutes in Alpha going back and forth.
Between iterations, right.
Yeah, running back and forth saying, okay, I need to go a couple of more pixels. So this is a very handy tool to have, not just in the Viewbox editor, but if you're doing any kind of HTML code in your application with the styling and you want to see how things are going to look quickly, you can use this tool. So like I said, I like to cover the numeric Viewbox container another session in more detail on exactly how this works. It's pretty cool. So I can basically create a whole bunch of custom keyboards like you can with the
form view control.
With a form view control. However, you have to use those editors with a form view control. I can use this with any control, because all I'm doing here is and there's a lot more. There's a little bit more to it. There's our delay time component here, which is basically just a text box. But what the onClick is doing is calling an open UX component. So there's my UX component that I'm opening that was created. And in there, I select what I want to open for that particular control. In this case, it's a numeric keypad. I have another application where I have a keyboard similar to what Dan created, which just has the alpha keys on it. There's nothing else on it but alpha keys, and a space bar and basically an enter when you're done. And
cool.
Also, how you open that is basically it's opened into a it's a window. In this case, it's a pop-up window you can open it into a div tab UI page. I'm going to cover this, like I said, in a lot more detail because there's a lot to build in. Well, not a lot. It's very simple to build it, but there's a lot too much more that I can cover in this one session here. But I'd like to come back and do this at some point and show the Viewbox controller because I'm using this heavily in another project that I'm working on that needs.
It is a very powerful control, and I don't know if you remember this, but during our DevCon 2016, our president, Selwyn Ravens, stood up and said, how many people are using the Viewbox control? And it wasn't a lot of people who raised their hands, and he was fairly disappointed because it's a very, very powerful control. Besides doing just the custom input keyboard like you've done there, it can also be done using templating. So you can actually create something that's very much like reporting, but client-side. So if you wanted to have it generate an invoice or something like that without being connected to the internet, Viewbox control is your control for that. So it's really truly amazing. It does take a little while to wrap your head around what each of the tabs are and stuff on the inside of it. But having been using it myself now for a few months, it's really something that you get a lot of use out of.
Yeah, and I believe it will take at least an hour just to go through and cover this.
Yeah, just to get you into the basics, sure.
Get you through the basics of it, but it's a very powerful tool. And like I said, I was kind of forced into it because I was mentoring somebody that needed some help with how to style it, so how to make it look right. So, yeah. And I actually showed him this afterwards, how I did it, and he went in there, used JSFiddle because he wanted to change it even more than what I did, and he went in there and he said the tool was awesome. He said
right.
You know, it was very handy having that tool.
I do have a follow-up question someone has asked here, and I said, okay, well, that's great. You're using JSFiddle, and you now have the CSS the way you want it. How do you take that CSS and put it back into the alpha component?
Oh.
If you could just do a quick show and tell of that would be cool.
Sure, yeah, and right on my component here, if I double-click on this, or if I select over here, Viewbox Properties, this is where I got the information in the first place, pasted in there. There's a CSS tab in here, and that's the styling for this Viewbox controller. And then there's a Viewbox layout. What's missing here, and it's not selected, and I did select it, and the preview, and this might be the version that I'm working with that it's not working. I'm using a pre-release version, so this might not be complete yet. As far as this goes, so this might be coming up where if you hit preview, you can view it here. But in the meantime, there are other places that you can use this tool for doing styling. But this is one place where I needed to get this done quick and show them how they can modify this on their own.
So what you do is once you're in JSFiddle and you've gotten it the way you want it, you come back here to the Viewbox builder. You double-click on the Viewbox, then you click on the CSS tab, and you just basically copy what's there and paste it and replace it. Delete what's there and replace what's in there.
Exactly.
So, great.
And
fantastic.
yeah, that's all you do. And since our
you can do the same here with the HTML as well, as it looks like.
Yeah, you could do that here.
You wanted to have a button 11 or something.
Yep. Exactly. You could have added buttons in there, completely worked in there, and then brought everything back into here. So everything, like I said, is in this div control. Is in this div tag.
Great.
And that's it. So that's a little tip of the day.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Chris. We do have a couple more questions that have come in. I think this one would be good for Sarah. Someone was asking what version HTTP publish came out in. In other words, is this a brand new feature or one that's been around for a little bit?
HTTP publish has been around for a little bit. I don't actually remember what version it came out in, but we can go check the release notes to find out.
But it was several versions back, I think.
Yeah, several versions ago.
It's something we didn't make a big deal out of, but we probably should have because it's...
Oh, definitely.
So that's just us. Well, anyway, we'll show you exactly how it works next week.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, Chris and Sarah, thank you very much for showing up. I'd like to thank everyone in attendance today. We're gonna call it a session today. If you've got further questions, send them over to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. Thanks a lot for attending. We hope to see you next Wednesday. Take care and goodbye.